The arena was alive with sound. Thousands of alien voices shouted, sang, and hissed in excitement. Bright lights glowed from the ceiling, casting long shadows across the battle floor. Every seat was filled. Warriors from 100 worlds leaned. Forward, waiting to see blood. In the center of the arena stood a woman. She was tall, armored in shining plates that reflected the lights like fire. Her name was Kareth, and she was feared across systems. For years, no one had ever stood against her and lived. Her claws were sharp, her speed unmatched, and her pride even greater. She had crushed challengers bigger than her, stronger than her, even entire groups at once. Now, she raised her hand and pointed toward the human. The crowd screamed louder, the sound shaking the air. The human was the first of his kind to step into this place. Rumors had traveled across the stars about him. Some said he was fragile. Some said humans were weak, soft-skinned creatures who hid behind technology. Others whispered that they were dangerous, monsters who could not be broken. The human did not move. He stood in plain armor, no weapon in his hands. His dark hair hung slightly over his eyes, and his face was calm. The chaos of the arena seemed not to touch him. Kareth hissed in anger. She wanted to see fear in his eyes. She wanted to see him shake. But there was nothing. His stillness was louder than the roar of the crowd. She shouted in her own tongue, her voice sharp and proud. "Human, I challenge you. Face me and fall before my strength." The translator device on his collar repeated her words in flat, cold English. He tilted his head slightly, then gave a small nod. No words. No reply. That silence spread across the arena like fire. Kareth's teeth bared. She wanted him to show weakness, but instead, he looked at her as if she was a child playing at war. His eyes locked on hers, unblinking, steady as stone. The horn sounded. The challenge had begun. Kareth launched forward, her claws scraping sparks against the floor. Her speed was terrifying. Dust spun in her wake as she leapt high, aiming straight for the human's throat. The crowd rose as one, screaming for blood. Her claws came down hard. The sound cracked like thunder. Dust exploded. Silenced out when the air cleared. The human was still standing, unharmed. Not even a scratch on his chest plate. The crowd gasped. Some shouted in disbelief, others roared in excitement. Kareth blinked, confused. Her strike had crushed metal, bone, stone. But this man had not moved. He had not even raised a hand to block. He simply stood there, calm, steady. She growled, her pride burning. She struck again, faster, harder. Her claws flashed like lightning. She kicked, punched, slashed, each blow enough to kill 10 men. The arena floor cracked beneath her power, but the human did not step back. Not once. Every strike landed, and yet he did not flinch. His face remained the same. His eyes never left hers. Her breath grew heavy, sweat ran down her neck. For the first time, Kareth felt something strange rise inside her chest, something she had never felt before. Fear. The crowd was in chaos now. Some shouted for her to finish him. Others cried out that the human was a god, that he could not be touched. She stepped back, claws trembling. Her chest rose and fell fast, her lungs burning. She snarled to hide her shaking. "Fight me. Do you hear me, human? Fight me." The translator repeated her scream, but the human did not reply. He only tilted his head slightly again, watching her with eyes of steel. That silence was worse than any blow. It cut deeper than her claws ever could. The horn blew again, echoing across the arena walls. The first round was over. She had attacked with everything she had, and the human had not even blinked. Kareth stood frozen, staring at him. The human slowly raised his chin, not with arrogance, but with calm certainty. It was as if he was telling her without words, "You cannot break me." The crowd went wild. Some cheered for Kareth, begging her to rise again. Others began to chant a new name, the human's name. It rolled through the air, stronger with every voice. She clenched her claws, anger and confusion burning inside her. She had never failed. She had never felt powerless. But standing before this silent human, she felt smaller than she ever had. In her life, her heart pounded, not only with rage, but with something else she could not name. And still, the human did not flinch. The arena lights dimmed, the next round waiting. The crowd held its breath. Kareth's pride demanded victory, but a whisper inside her told her the truth. This fight was no longer just about strength. Something deeper was happening here, and as she stared into his calm, unshaken eyes, she realized the most terrifying thing of all. This human was not here to win. He was here to change everything. The arena floor was cracked where Kareth's claws had struck, deep lines carved like scars in the stone. Dust hung in the air, curling. In the glow of the lights, the crowd still shouted, but it was no longer the confident roar of victory. It was mixed now, half disbelief, half awe. The human stood at the center, untouched, calm, silent. His chest rose and fell slowly, as if he had been waiting for her to understand. Kareth bared her teeth and hissed, "You think I cannot break you? You are nothing but flesh." The translator on his collar spoke her words to him, but he gave no answer. His stillness was his weapon. Her pride burned hotter than fire. She could not allow the first round to end like this. She bent low, claws scraping sparks from the floor, muscles coiled like springs. The crowd leaned forward, feeling her fury, and then she moved, her body blurred, faster than most eyes could follow. She spun low, her claw sweeping at his legs. It should have cut him down, but when the strike landed, the human did not fall. He did not even shift. She spun higher, her heel striking his chest with the weight of a hammer. The crack of impact echoed. The arena shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. The crowd roared, then fell silent as they saw. The human was still standing. His boots were planted like roots in the earth. His arms hung at his sides. His face was the same as before, calm, unreadable, almost patient. Kareth's eyes widened. That strike had broken stone walls in her homeworld's training grounds. That strike had ended champions. Yet here he stood, as if her power was nothing more than a breeze. Impossible. She whispered to herself. The whispers spread into the crowd. Alien voices hissed and growled in disbelief. Some laughed nervously. Others shouted that the human was cheating, using hidden tech. But no one could deny what they saw. Not a single mark on him. Kareth's rage twisted into desperation. She leapt high into the air, her claws flashing with energy. A blue glow rippled down her arms, her people's ancient battle gift. It burned with power, and with it, she would crush him. The crowd screamed as she came down like a meteor. Her claws slammed across his chest in a shower of sparks and light. The floor cracked beneath them, stone breaking apart. The air shook with the force of her blow. When the light faded, the human was still there, standing. Unmoved. Kareth stumbled back, gasping for breath. Her claws tingled from the impact. Her arms trembled. The human slowly lifted his head, meeting her eyes again, calm, silent. That look was worse than any strike. She had fought beasts twice her size. She had broken bones and torn armor. But nothing had ever looked at her like this man did, without fear, without effort. His eyes weren't just calm, they were steady, almost pitying. As if he wasn't fighting an enemy, but watching the storm. That would soon pass. Her heart thundered in her chest. Sweat ran cold down her neck. She felt the edge of something sharp, something she never thought she would feel. Doubt. The crowd's noise grew wild now. Some chanted her name, urging her to keep going. Others began chanting for him, the human whose name they didn't even know. His silence had become more powerful than her screams. "Fight me! Kareth roared, her voice cracking. "Fight me, coward!" The translator repeated her cry in English. Finally, the human moved. Not with a strike, not with a weapon. He simply raised one hand and caught her next blow. Her claws, glowing with energy, froze in his grip. She pushed with all her strength, her muscles straining, her bones burning. But his hand did not move. His grip was iron, his arm steady. Kareth stared at him, her face inches from his. His eyes were close now, so close she could see the strange calm fire inside them. She snarled, but her voice shook. "Why? Won't you fall?" The human tilted his head slightly, as though considering her words. But he still said nothing. His silence was an answer she did not want to hear. The horn blew again. The second round was over. Kareth ripped her hand free and stumbled back, chest heaving. She looked down at her claws that had broken hundreds of warriors, claws that had drawn blood from every enemy she faced. But against him, they were nothing. The crowd's chants grew louder, mixing into a storm of sound. Some called for her victory. Some called for his. The entire arena was no longer sure who was predator and who was prey. Kareth stood trembling, rage in her heart, but something else deeper, something she had never faced. Her pride cracked like the broken floor beneath her. The human lowered his hand again, slowly, calmly, as if even this effort had cost him nothing, and once more he did not flinch. The arena's noise rolled like a storm. Thousands of voices clashed together, some shouting for Kareth, others for the human. The air smelled of dust and sparks. The cracked stone floor looked like the battlefield of gods. Kareth's chest heaved as she stood tall, sweat sliding down her neck. Her claws still tingled from where he had caught her last strike. No one had ever done that to her. Not once. She had fought titans, beasts with skin like iron, soldiers bred for war. All of them had bled. All of them had fallen. But this man, this human, stood untouched, as if her every attack had been nothing but the sting of a feather. Her pride screamed inside her head. She was Kareth, champion of her people, warrior of the red moons. She could not fail. Not here. Not in front of them all. The human still stood calm, watching her. His silence cut sharper than any blade. But what shook her most were his eyes. They were not the eyes of prey. They were not even the eyes of a predator. They were something else, steel, unbreaking, unyielding. He did not glare with anger. He did not burn with hatred. His gaze was steady, patient, and terrifying in its certainty. When her eyes met his, her breath caught. She felt something she had never felt in battle. Her knees wanted to bend. Her claws wanted to lower. Her body wanted to stop. No. She shook her head, growling low to herself. She could not let this weakness control her. "Do you hear me, human?" She shouted, her voice shaking the air. "I will break you. I will make you kneel." The translator repeated her words, but the human only blinked slowly. He tilted his head as if he was studying her, not as an equal, but like a teacher might study a stubborn student. That look burned her more than her own exhaustion. She charged again, her claws glowing with furious light. Each step cracked the arena floor. Her speed was a blur, her voice a scream. She aimed directly for his throat, a killing strike. Her claws met his hand again. This time, he didn't just block. He caught her attack mid-air and held it as if she was nothing more than a child striking at stone. The crowd gasped as one. Silence spread for a heartbeat, heavy and sharp. Kareth's strength poured into her arms. Her muscles burning, her teeth grinding. She pushed with everything she had. But his grip did not move. Not even an inch. And he kept staring at her. Those eyes calm, steady, endless. She had faced storms, fire, and death, but never had she felt such pressure. It was not the weight of his strength. It was the weight of his certainty. He looked at her as if he already knew the outcome. Her arms shook, her knees bent. "Why, won't you fight back?" She spat through clenched teeth. For the first time, he moved more than his hand. He leaned forward, just slightly, and his eyes locked deeper into hers. The translator did not speak. He had said nothing. But his silence carried meaning. He didn't need to fight her. He didn't need to prove anything, because in his eyes, she had already lost. The thought hit her like a blade to the chest. The crowd erupted, half in cheers, half in chaos. Some shouted that the human was invincible. Others screamed that Kareth was failing her people. The noise became a storm, but inside her ears, there was only the sound of her own heartbeat. Ba-dum, ba-dum, ba-dum. She ripped her claw free and stumbled backward. Gasping, her hands trembled. Her chest rose and fell like she had been running for hours. The human didn't chase her. He didn't press forward. He simply lowered his hand back to his side, calm, controlled. Still, those eyes followed her, watching, measuring, waiting. Kareth roared, slamming her claws into the cracked floor, sending shards flying. I will not kneel, do you hear me? I will not kneel to you. The translator shouted her rage across the arena, but the human didn't reply. His silence was heavier than her words, and his eyes never wavered. The horn sounded again, calling the round to its end. Kareth froze in place, panting. Her people were shouting her name, demanding she rise, demanding she prove her strength. But her heart trembled, and she couldn't stop staring into those eyes. Eyes of steel, unblinking, unbreaking. She turned her head away for a moment, ashamed of the weakness clawing at her chest. But when she looked back, he was still standing there, as if carved from the arena stone. And in that moment, Kareth realized the truth. This battle was no longer about who had stronger claws, sharper weapons, or faster speed. This was about will. And against that human's steel eyes, her will was beginning to crack. The arena floor looked like a battlefield carved by gods. Deep cracks cut across the stone, dust rising in slow clouds with every step. The crowd's voices rolled, like thunder, half cheering Kareth's name, half chanting for the silent human. Kareth stood with her claws raised, her chest heaving. Her body was strong, built for endless war, but her spirit trembled in ways she had never felt before. The human hadn't spoken a single word. He hadn't struck a single blow. Yet she was the one struggling to breathe. Her pride screamed at her. She was Kareth, champion of the Red Moons. She had never fallen. She could not fall, not here, not in front of her people, not in front of the galaxy, but his eyes. Those steel eyes still locked onto her, calm and steady. They did not burn with rage or gloat with victory. They simply were. A mountain unmoved by storm. She roared, shaking off the doubt clawing at her chest. With one motion, she lifted both arms, letting her claws glow with burning energy. The crowd screamed with her, voices crashing together, shaking the walls. Her body blazed with her people's battle gift, blue fire running through her veins, bursting from her skin. This was everything she had. Her strongest attack. A strike that had killed beasts twice her size, that had broken warriors feared across star systems. If this did not bring him down, nothing ever would. With a cry that split the air, Kareth launched herself forward. The arena floor cracked under the force of her leap. She came down with all her power, her claws blazing like twin comets. The ground shattered when she landed. Stone exploded outward, sending shards flying into the stands. The air shook with thunder. Light blinded the crowd for an instant, and then silence. Dust hung heavy, hiding the center of the arena. The crowd held its breath, waiting to see. Slowly, the dust cleared. The human was still standing, unmoving, unbroken. Not a single scratch marked his armor. His feet were planted firm, as if he had grown from the earth itself. Kareth's knees buckled. Her chest heaved so hard she thought her ribs might crack. Sweat ran down her face. Her claws, once blazing, flickered and dimmed. She stared at him in horror. How How could he take all of her strength, her fire, her fury, and still not flinch? The crowd erupted in chaos. Some screamed for blood, demanding Kareth keep fighting. Others shouted in awe, chanting the human's name. The sound was deafening, but to Kareth it was distant, drowned beneath the pounding of her heart. Ba-dum, 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 that her vision blurred. Her body trembled. She had given everything, yet he was still standing, and then the human moved, not with violence, not with fury. He simply raised his head, his eyes locking onto hers once more. Calm, steady, steel. Kareth felt her strength drain from her legs. For the first time in her life, she dropped to her knees, not because she chose to, but because her body betrayed her. The crowd gasped. Their champion, their warrior, kneeling before the silent human, her claws dug into the broken stone. She tried to rise, to roar, to hide her weakness. But her arms shook too much, her voice cracked. The fire in her chest sputtered into ash. The human took a single step, forward. Just one, and it felt like the weight of the universe pressed down on her. Kareth's breathing grew ragged. She looked up at him, her lips trembling. "What are you?" she whispered. The translator carried her broken words into the arena. The crowd grew silent, hanging on his response. But the human did not answer. He didn't need to. His silence was heavier than her roar. Kareth's heart broke with the truth. This was not a battle of strength. It never had been. This was a battle of will. And hers had cracked. She lowered her head, claws scraping weakly at the floor. Her pride screamed in her chest, but her body refused to rise. And still, the human did not flinch. The horn sounded, marking the end of the round. The crowd erupted again, but Kareth did not hear them. She only heard the silence of the man standing before her, and it cut deeper than any blade. For the first time in her life, Kareth, the champion, the predator, the unbroken warrior, felt small. And in that moment, she knew she had reached her breaking point. The arena was shaking with noise. Voices rose like crashing waves. Kareth's name screamed in fury. The human's name chanted in awe. The stone floor lay broken, scattered with dust and shards. And in the center of it all, Kareth knelt. Her chest heaved. Her claws trembled. Her body refused to rise. She had never been brought to her knees in battle. Yet here she was, staring at the ground, too weak to lift her head, and above her stood the human. He had not struck her once. He had not unleashed a weapon, not even raised his fists in anger. All he had done was endure, still, silent, and it had been enough to break her. The crowd demanded blood. They screamed for the human to finish her. They howled for Kareth to rise and reclaim her honor, but the human did not move. He only watched, and then he spoke. His voice was not loud. It was calm, deep, steady. But in the silence that followed, it cut through the arena like a blade. "Why do you fight?" The translator carried his words across every ear in the arena. The crowd froze. Kareth froze. Her head snapped up, her eyes wide. That was the first sound he had made. After all this time, after all her fury and strength, his first words were a question. She snarled, trying to mask the shiver crawling through her body. "I fight because strength is life. Weakness is death. My people survive only through power." Her voice echoed against the broken walls. The crowd roared in agreement, her people chanting with pride. But the human did not flinch. His calm eyes stayed on hers. He stepped closer, one step, then another. Each footfall seemed to shake her chest more than her own heartbeats. "And yet," he said, his voice steady, "you kneel." The words struck harder than her own claws had against his chest. The crowd went silent. Kareth's breath caught in her throat. She wanted to roar back, to deny it, to rise and fight. But her body trembled, refusing her pride. She was kneeling. Not because she chose to, because she had no choice. Her lips pulled back in a desperate snarl. You think this is victory? You think silence makes you strong? The human tilted his head slightly, his eyes never leaving hers. Strength is not in noise, strength is in will, and yours is broken. The words landed like hammers in her chest. For years, she had believed strength was only in power, in force, in victory through blood. Yet here was a man who had not struck her once, and already he had shattered her more than any warrior before him. The crowd was restless now. Some screamed in rage, demanding the human be silenced. Others sat frozen, unable to look away from the calm figure who had not moved an inch. Kareth's pride burned hotter, but inside, a crack had widened. She whispered hoarsely, Why don't you finish me?" The human leaned closer, his eyes sharp as steel. "Because I am not here to kill you," the arena gasped. His words echoed in every ear. Kareth's own breath caught, confusion flashing across her face. He continued, his voice slow and steady. "I am here to show you, to show your people, that power without purpose is nothing. That strength without control is weakness." Kareth's claws scraped against the floor. His words sank deep, stabbing where her armor could not protect. She shook her head, trying to push them away. You speak like a teacher," she spat, her voice weak. The human's lips curved, not a smile, but something colder. "No. I speak like someone who has already seen where your path leads." The weight of his words pressed down heavier than the broken stone. Kareth looked into his eyes and saw no arrogance, no mockery. Only certainty. Only truth. The crowd broke into chaos again, voices clashing, some cheering, others cursing. But Kareth no longer heard them. She only heard him. Her pride wanted to scream, her heart wanted to deny. But somewhere deep, she felt the crack spreading wider. For the first time in her life, she questioned everything she had been taught. She whispered, more to herself than to him, "If strength is not enough, then what is?" The human's eyes softened only slightly, but his voice stayed steady. "Choice." Kareth's claws froze against the stone. The word echoed inside her, like thunder. Choice. The horn sounded, ending the round. The crowd erupted. Once more, the storm of voices crashing around her. But in Kareth's ears, there was only silence and the weight of one human's words, and she realized the truth. The battle was no longer for victory. It was for her soul. The arena still shook with the voices of thousands, but for Kareth, the sound was distant, like waves crashing far away. All she could hear was the echo of the human's words. Choice. That single word struck deeper than claws or steel. It gnawed at her, twisting in her chest. For her entire life, she had believed strength was everything. Her people taught that power was survival, that mercy was weakness. She had killed for honor, fought for pride, conquered for glory. And now this man stood before her unbroken, untouched, and told her strength meant nothing without choice. Kareth staggered to her feet, her legs trembling. The crowd roared when they saw her rise, chanting her name. She clenched her claws, trying to push the doubt away, but her eyes kept finding his. Those steel eyes that didn't mock her, didn't pity her, they judged her. And worse, they understood her. She bared her teeth, desperate to feel like herself again. "You speak as if you know me," she growled. "As if you know my people." The human's voice was steady, unshaken. "I know enough. I have seen warriors who live only to fight. I have seen worlds burn because they thought strength was enough. And I have seen what happens when someone chooses another way." The crowd grew restless, their chants shifting, clashing together. Some wanted Kareth to silence him, others wanted the human to speak more. The tension spread through the stands like fire. Kareth stepped closer, her claws twitching at her sides. And what way is that? To stand still? To say nothing? To do nothing? The human's gaze never moved from hers, to endure, to stand when others fall, to give choice even when you could take it away. The words hit her again, like invisible blows. She snarled, but her voice cracked. "You call that strength?" "Yes," he answered simply. The crowd gasped at the quiet weight of his voice. Kareth felt her breath hitch, her heart pounding in her ears. Her claws trembled. She could crush his throat in one strike, she wanted to. But the truth was, she wasn't sure she could anymore, and worse, she wasn't sure she wanted to. People's eyes were on her. The galaxy's eyes were on her. Yet in this moment, all that mattered was his calm stare, his unshaken will. Kareth took another step, close enough now that the heat of his breath brushed her face. Her voice was low, broken. "Why me? Why stand against me? There are others, stronger than me." The human leaned slightly closer, his words slow, precise. "Because you still have a choice. Others don't." Kareth froze. The truth of it cut her deeper than any wound. She was feared, but she had never belonged. She fought because she was told to fight. She killed because she was expected to. Kill. She had never asked why. Her pride tried to scream again, but the sound caught in her throat. Her claws lowered slightly, trembling. For the first time, the crowd booed, sensing her weakness. Their champion faltering, she turned her head toward the stands, their voices like knives in her ears. She wanted to roar back, to prove she was still theirs. But when she looked back at the human, the fire in her chest burned differently. Not rage, not hunger. Something else. Something frightening. Respect. The human saw it. His steel eyes softened just enough to make her breath catch. "You don't have to kneel," he said quietly. "You can stand, but not for them, for yourself." Kareth's heart pounded. For herself. The words echoed again and again. The horn sounded, marking the round's end, but neither of them moved. They stood inches apart, staring into each other's eyes, the noise of the crowd fading into nothing. Kareth felt her claws lower fully, the strength in them drained. She whispered so softly only he could hear, "What are you doing to me, human?" His reply was calm, steady. "Nothing. You're doing it yourself." Her chest ached, her mind swirled. The fight wasn't a fight anymore. It was something else, something she didn't understand, something that scared her more than death. The crowd didn't see her breaking, but she knew it. She felt it. This battle wasn't about blood, that it was about who she would choose to become. The arena was louder than ever, voices rising like a storm that would never end. Kareth's people screamed for her to rise, to strike, to kill. Others shouted for the human, their chants breaking into waves of awe and fear. The air shook with sound, but inside Kareth's chest, there was only silence, the human's silence. He still stood before her, calm, steady, unflinching. His eyes of steel did not waver, did not burn with triumph, did not gloat with victory. They only watched. They only waited. Kareth's claws hung at her sides, trembling. Her knees were weak, but she was not kneeling now. She stood, though unsteady, breathing hard. For the first time, she did not know what to do. Her whole life had been about strength. She was raised to believe mercy was weakness, that compassion was death, that the only way forward was through blood. She had lived for honor, for victory, for the chance of her people. And now, she no longer knew if any of it mattered. Human took one slow step closer. The crowd hushed, thousands of voices dropping into silence, as if they too were afraid of what would come next. He extended his hand, not in strike, not in demand, but in offering. Kareth's breath caught. Her claws twitched. She stared at the hand, open and steady, waiting for her choice. Behind her, the crowd screamed in rage. Her people roared, "Kill him! Kill him for the red moons!" Their voices cracked the air. Her pride screamed with them, telling her to finish it, to end this shame, to prove she was still their champion. But another voice whispered inside her chest, The voice she had tried to bury, the one the human had, awakened. A voice that asked, "What if they are wrong?" She closed her eyes for a moment, trembling. She saw her victories. The warriors she had killed, the blood she had spilled, the pride she had carried. And then she saw this human, standing silent, never striking, never breaking. He could have destroyed her. But he hadn't. He had chosen something else. Her eyes opened. She looked at his hand again. If she took it, she knew what it meant. She would be seen as a traitor, as weak, as broken. Her people would never forgive her. The galaxy would never forget. But if she refused, if she struck him down, then nothing would change. She would still be their champion, but she would also still be their prisoner. A weapon, a beast in chains. Her claws curled. Her chest rose and fell fast. She looked into his eyes one last time. They did not push her. They did not pull her. They only waited. Her heart thundered. Her pride screamed. Her soul cracked open, and Kareth made her choice. Slowly, trembling, she raised her clawed hand. The crowd screamed louder, thinking she would strike. Her people howled with hunger for blood, but instead, she placed her claw in his hand. The arena fell into silence. It was not weakness, not surrender. It was something greater. A choice made not for them, not for honor, not for fear. For herself. The human's grip was firm, steady, unshaken. He pulled her gently to her feet, raising her up before the entire galaxy. The crowd erupted. In chaos, shouts of betrayal, screams of rage, chants of awe. Some demanded her death. Others wept in disbelief. The noise was deafening, but Kareth no longer heard them. For the first time in her life, she was free. The human spoke again, his voice calm and deep, carrying across the arena like thunder. This battle was never about who was stronger. It was about who would choose. The translator repeated his words in 1,000 tongues. The silence after was heavy, unshakable. Kareth stood tall beside him, her claws still trembling but no longer raised in fury. Her people screamed for her to return to them, to kneel to their way. But she didn't. She stood where she was. With him, the horn sounded, signaling the end. The fight was over. The galaxy would never be the same.